Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Toast. I've been hearing about this all week long, so I decided to look into it. And is something going on between Nintendo and Xbox? Now, they have worked together in the past, and their relationship seems to progressively get stronger, but a few things have happened over the last week that really has the community believe they have something going on behind the scenes. So we're going to dig into that today, and also, we got an update on that newly reported Uncharted game. It looks like my suspicions were correct after all, and we'll talk about that as well. Today though, let's start off things with an E3 event. Yeah, E3 is returning in 2021, and we now have our first event scheduled. Ubisoft will be holding their next Ubisoft Forward event on June 12th, which will be a part of E3. Now that means that E3 is officially less than 60 days away, and I am absolutely stoked to see what they have in store for us. We got several big publishers there, including Xbox, Nintendo, and here with Ubisoft. This should be a fun time for gamers because there really isn't an event quite like E3 week, and we will get an early start with Ubisoft Forward. What should we expect with Ubisoft Forward though? They're not really saying much as of this moment, but a few games that I would expect to be there are Far Cry 6, which was originally supposed to release in early 2021. You also have Rainbow Six Quarantine, which is another game that we know little about. Those two games I do absolutely expect to be there. And then there's some wild cards like Beyond Good and Evil 2. That game has been in development for such a long time, so maybe we hear something about that. And then you have that Prince of Persia remake as well. They did recently delay that game after fans didn't really react to it all that well, so maybe they come back and show how they've improved it since we last saw it. Regardless, in less than 2 months, E3 begins, so let's start that hype train, and as always, I will keep you up to date on all of the E3 news and leaks that are bound to happen. Moving on, Nier Replicant Remaster releases next week on April 23rd. I'm very excited about this game as Nier Automata was one of my favorite games from last generation. It's an absolute masterpiece with fun combat, beautiful music that I still listen to on occasions, and a weird but mesmerizing story and world. Well, some people do think Replicant has a better overall story. That certainly has me excited, but some new details came out about the upcoming remaster, and I got some good news. Apparently, the remaster includes cut content from the original, an extra link to Nier Automata, and for fans of Dad Nier, you will have a nice little surprise as well. We'll have to wait and see what exactly that means, but for those who were disappointed about playing as the brother rather than the father, should be relieved that they do have something for fans of the father. Of course, the original launch for Nier had two different versions. In Japan, they released both Nier Replicant and Nier Gestalt. In Replicant, you play as a young brother to a sister, and then Gestalt you played as the father of a daughter. From my understanding, they aren't vastly different outside of their portrayed relationships, but Gestalt was the only game that released in the West. So for a lot of people, you will be playing as a new character in this remastered version. Luckily though, it does seem like that they have something for fans of Gestalt. Regardless, it seems like they put a lot of work into making this remaster into something special. It makes sense though considering just how well received Nier Automata has been. This franchise has more fans now, and there's a lot more interest for this remaster than what it had with its original release back in 2010. So for a lot of people, this will be like a brand new game, and it's sounding really good on paper. I'm definitely excited to play this game next week when it releases on April 23rd. Also, we got a new expansion to talk about today for one of the best RPGs that released in 2020. I often feel this game goes under the radar, especially with console players, because it is a little bit more niche. However, Wasteland 3 is getting its first narrative expansion, dubbed the Battle of Stilltown. This adds a ton of new content, including a new area to explore, a new storyline, new gameplay mechanics, new weapons and armor, and enhancements to the base game. Yeah, there's a lot going on with this expansion, and the release date is right around the corner. It will be available on June 3rd. You'll be able to pick this up for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, though we don't have word on the Xbox Game Pass edition just yet. Deep Silver is the publisher and not Xbox themselves after all. You have to keep in mind that Wasteland 3 was in development prior to Xbox acquiring the studio in Exile, so we will have to wait and see on if this comes to Xbox Game Pass Day 1. However, as good as this game is, you might want to check it out when it releases on June 3rd. Let's talk about PlayStation though. Now, in the last few years, PlayStation's ported a few of their games over to the PC platform. This was actually a big surprise for some fans at first, but they have been bringing over some of their first-party games to PC. You have Death Stranding, Heavy Rain, Horizon Zero Dawn, and a few others, but their latest game to come to PC is Days Gone, developed by their first-party studio, Sony Bend. Well, it now has an official release date for Steam and the Epic Game Store. That's right, you'll be able to play Days Gone on your PC starting May 19th, and it brings over several improvements over the original release. This will include uncapped frame rate, 21:9 ultra-wide monitor support, up to 500 zombies on screen at once, and several other graphical options. So this should be another premium PlayStation game for PC, and I really like that Sony is taking this PC initiative. I know some fans want games to remain exclusive to PlayStation only, but I've said this before, this actually helps PlayStation fund even more games in the future. It's beneficial in the fact that these games will be enjoyed by more people, and it expands the PlayStation fan base, but it also benefits current PlayStation owners because Sony can continue to fund more big AAA games like this. You know, these games are incredibly expensive to make, and by putting them on PC, it helps fund even more games for PlayStation fans in the future. I mean, even if you look at that report from last week, a sequel to Days Gone was rejected by PlayStation. The first game was reportedly profitable and it sold millions and millions of copies, but still it was rejected. That's the thing though, games like this are incredibly expensive, and Sony didn't seem to want to take the risk of making a sequel. I don't necessarily agree with their decision on that, but a PC release like this can help them make even more money on a game like this to where they can continue investing in the Sony Bend studio so they can hopefully make their next hit game. And that right there is what we want to see, and that's why I see these PC releases as a win-win situation for both PC and PlayStation fans. I mean, so far it looks like PlayStation has had a lot of success on PC with their games, so I do fully expect them to continue to release these games on PC in the future. It seems like they do it by a case-by-case basis, but nonetheless, go check out Days Gone on PC when it releases next month. And while we're on the topic of PlayStation IP and Sony Bend, it turns out my suspicion was correct after all. So last week, Jason Schreier revealed a lot of information about what's happening over at Sony Bend. It didn't exactly paint Sony in the best light, and they've been under fire ever since, but there was one big positive that came out from that article. A new Uncharted game was revealed to be in development with both Naughty Dog and Sony Bend working on it. That right there is very exciting stuff. Uncharted is an amazing franchise, and with this news, we might get a brand new Uncharted game for the PlayStation 5, but you might want to pump your brakes. Jason Schreier and MinMax Show clarified what was going on with that game, and Sony Bend was actually the lead on that project, with Naughty Dog overseeing this new Uncharted game. Now, a lot of y'all probably don't even realize this, but Sony Bend has already worked on Uncharted in the past. Uncharted Golden Abyss for the PlayStation Vita, which was vastly underrated in my opinion. Golden Abyss is excellent in my opinion, so they have my full support if they ever do work on their own Uncharted game for the PlayStation 5. According to Jason Schreier though, it actually sounds like it was a spin-off of some sorts, but Naughty Dog started to take more of a creative overseeing role. After that point, Sony Bend felt more like a Naughty Dog support team, which was how he explained The Last of Us remake as well. Seems like Naughty Dog just keeps taking over these projects that another team was originally working on, and these teams want their own projects as they do fear being absorbed by Naughty Dog. So yeah, Sony Bend ended up getting a green light for their own original IP last month, which is great news, but sadly, that ended their work on this new Uncharted game. Jason Schreier isn't sure what happened with that game, but considering Sony Bend was the lead, he imagines they probably canceled that game. It was very early on and just on paper. Maybe Naughty Dog continues it, but it doesn't sound too promising. As an Uncharted fan myself, it is a little disappointing, but I'm still glad to see Sony Bend get their own project. I think they absolutely deserve it as they're incredibly talented themselves. I think they have a bright future ahead of them, and hopefully their next project really showcases that. Next up, what is up with Nintendo and Xbox? They have built up a strong relationship in recent years. We've seen Xbox release several games on the Nintendo Switch. This includes both Ori games, Cuphead, and they even got Banjo-Kazooie into Super Smash Bros. That is still amazing to me. I love that Xbox and Nintendo have worked together here recently, but it sounds like they might have something else planned. Now, we know Phil Spencer likes to tease things with his subtle clues in his videos and t-shirts, and one thing that people have really analyzed is Phil Spencer's shelf where he has a ton of things in the background. A lot of people thought he was just trolling at first, including myself, but according to VentureBeat journalist Jeff Grubb, pretty much everything on his shelf meant something. Obviously, as we've talked about in the past, that Kojima statue next to the Xbox logo could signify a Kojima-Xbox partnership, which has leaked, but there is another theory going around about Nintendo and Xbox working on something. There is a Switch on his shelf after all, and Jeff Grubb, which has shown to have a lot of inside information, seems to be hinting at that as well. On top of that, another insider, Ed, is also saying that Nintendo and Xbox has something in the works, and we will hear about it by this fall. Both of these insiders have a proven track record, so obviously fans are really speculating on what all this means. Now, you still need to take this with a grain of salt though. I'm always a little weary over leaks like this where you can just kind of guess and have a good chance of getting it right, but because both of these insiders have a proven track record, I thought it would be fun to at least talk about. And truthfully, it's not really that crazy to think that Xbox and Nintendo have something planned. They've been doing this for a while, so now the question is, what could they do if something comes to fruition? And well, I think a few different things could happen here. Xbox Game Pass on the Switch will be the big talking point for a lot of people. Xbox, of course, wants Xbox Game Pass on as many devices as they can get it on, and the Switch would be a huge inclusion. The Switch has a dedicated hardcore fan base that's still growing rapidly, so that would be absolutely massive, but I'm not convinced Nintendo would want a third-party subscription service like that on the Switch. Now, they have been adding cloud games to the Switch and everything, but an entire subscription service is just a little different. There would be overlap with some of their own games within the eShop, and that could counteract Nintendo wanting Xbox Game Pass on the Switch. I think that they would have to tailor it specifically for the Switch if that were to happen. It would be really cool though. I would be up for that, though I'm just not exactly sure about it. It could also be something like a new Smash Bros. Character. Xbox has both Minecraft and Banjo in Smash, so they've done this before, but what about something like Master Chief from Halo? Could they possibly pull that off just ahead of the Halo Infinite release? That would be big for both Nintendo and Xbox. Xbox fans would buy into Smash Bros., and Nintendo fans might buy into Halo. That's a win-win situation there if you ask me. Another thing that they could do is bring some Rare games over to the Switch. There are a lot of Rare fans on the Switch because Nintendo fans grew up playing Rare's old games, so if they could get Rare Replay on the Switch, that would be pretty interesting. They could even bring over Battletoads, which released just last year. That is a second-party game with Delilah Studios working on it, and it could majorly benefit from having another release on the Switch. Who knows? Maybe they could work together on a new Banjo-Kazooie game. I'm just joking, of course, but who really knows what this will be? It's just a rumor for the moment, but however, let me hear some of your theories in the comments below. With that said, let's take a look at the poll of the day, and with all this talk about Naughty Dog here recently, I wanted to see what you all want from them next. If you could choose their next game, what would it be? And 57% of you said that you want a new IP from Naughty Dog. Second place was surprisingly Jak and Daxter, which is unfortunately confirmed not to be in development. Third was Uncharted, and then last place was The Last of Us. And as much as I'm an Uncharted fan, I would be happy with a new IP as well. You know, this is an incredibly talented team, and I'll be interested in whatever they do next. I know there was some criticism with The Last of Us Part 2, but it does have its fans as well, and even if you don't like its story, it's still an extremely impressive game. I definitely want to see what they can do next. I, however, hope it's not as dark this time. The Last of Us is great and everything, but I like their more fun stuff like Uncharted, Jak, and then Crash Bandicoot. I hope they do something like those games yet again. But yeah, I'd be happy with a new IP as well. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.